So I met David online virtually, right? Which
Yep.
is, it says a lot about, the times of today, our technology, that you can work with anyone around the world. You're no longer held back through proximity. You can do it
Mhm.
virtually, which is fantastic. So David, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, with technology and marketing, there's always something new happening. And I think, like you mentioned, it's, you know, the kind of perfect timing as, most of folks have been in quarantine or like, working from home. And you see a lot of businesses transitioning from going to the office to, dialing in remotely. You're seeing from like call centers all the way up to executives that are, working at home. A lot of the offices are empty, and we had almost a year and a half to 2 years proving the fact that, businesses are able to be sustainable having this type of work structure, having this type of work-life balance with dialing in, working remote. And it's a win-win, right? Employees feel like, they have a little bit more autonomy, a lot more, kind of self-care time, or time to just take care of things around the house in between meetings or in between work, or when they're taking a break from work. I know that for me, working with clients and other businesses, we were kind of prepped for the pandemic. Prior to all this lockdown and quarantining, we, most of the time, 90% of the time, working remotely. So a lot of our businesses, conversing on Zoom calls or emails or just telephone calls. So for the metaverse, that's the, I would say, that the next, I guess, step in this evolution of working remotely and working with virtual teams, right? The metaverse is still kind of like a little bit in the realm of like, what is it? Is it really happening? I just want to let people know that it's very similar to how people were considering cryptocurrency, right? So whether it's 6 7 years ago with cryptocurrency, when it slowly got into more of the mainstream news media, people were like, wait, so is it real money, or what is it, and what's blockchain, and what's a Bitcoin, and how do I get a Bitcoin? Is it a physical actually money? So I think we're having a very similar conversation around the metaverse, right? And obviously, one of the companies pioneering that is Meta, or the parent company of Facebook. Mark Zuckerberg has been pioneering that for the last, I think, 4 or 5 years. When I was working at the agency, we had a roadmap of Facebook. It was a 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 10 year plan. And we saw this back in 2000, I want to say 2016, 2017. And there was a little dot, and it said metaverse, virtual reality, augmented reality. So for folks who don't know what the metaverse is, or like hearing it for the first time, it is essentially taking your virtual work or virtual reality into a whole nother realm. So it's essentially, if you heard of the game Sims, it's very similar to that. So you have an avatar, or you have your own, you know, digital version of yourself, going to a digital, geographical place, right? And why this is appealing for folks is because, again, setting up offices, setting up a big stadium with all these attendees costs money. People getting there, whatever the content is that's going to be hosted there costs a lot of money. By doing this metaverse version of that, you're reducing a lot of a just the logistics of setting it up. The cost is a big benefit, right? So usually you will have to, rent out a large space. Say, for example, you have 100,000 attendees. Well, your spaces are quite limited, and you have to pay a lot, right? With the metaverse, you can maybe rent a digital stadium and invite 1 million people there, and they go there like a Zoom call. And that's what the metaverse is like, one of the many benefits of the metaverse. I, for one, haven't joined yet. I'm still kind of, dipping my toes there. But Vivian, have you done anything with the metaverse or set up an avatar there
Actually,
yet?
I've been, well, few points. I've actually attended an online meta online conference.
Nice.
It's somewhat rudimentary where you create an avatar for yourself and then you walk into this virtual space. But,
Mhm.
it was really clunky because it was an energy related, oil and gas related
Yeah.
conference. And I still felt like it was clunky because, um, when you talk about creating those the design or the animation, it was choppy. And also what do you call that? The rendering, of your
Yeah.
avatar
Yeah.
was,
Yeah.
it was still very um, blocky. What is the
Sure.
right word for that?
Pixelated. Yeah.
Pixelated and you saw
Glitchy.
polygons and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So it obviously didn't feel natural. Right.
Gotcha.
And then because I didn't wear goggles, I could still
I see.
see, my real life. And then I'm
I
looking
see.
at my metaverse or virtual space through my screen. So it still felt, completely artificial. It didn't feel natural.
I see.
I wasn't immersed in that space. So
Right.
I think technically it isn't metaverse because I'm very aware of my 3D
Yeah.
space, but it was a step into, the possibility of what that metaverse could feel like in the future.
It certainly seemed like a version of the metaverse, right?
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah, they're trying to bring you into
yeah,
this,
it's metaverse
the
light,
camera.
if you will,
Yeah,
right? Because like, um, when Facebook bought Oculus, people were like, Facebook, you're a social platform. What are you doing with this? And it's like the grand scheme of things was, hey, this is going to be the hardware allowing you to connect with the metaverse, right? When you were saying, oh, I don't have the goggles on and I'm not seeing what other people are seeing, where, when I had the liberty to borrow my friend's Oculus and, the newer version. I mean, it's very immersive, right? So you're talking about if you're able to join people virtually at a conference, like, the one that you went to, and you have the goggles on, you in a way feel like you're there and you're actually
yeah,
connecting with people without actually physically being there with them, right? However, when you were talking about this, I'm bringing it up because we're both in the similar generation, and the new generation that's coming into the workforce or using these new technologies, they grew up with virtual reality. They grew up with augmented reality. So it's, Facebook, they don't just buy companies for the whim of it. They know that, oh, they're the number one leader in virtual reality goggles, augmented reality stuff. So, how do we integrate that with metaverse and the audience, right? So as they're kind of growing up, for example, my kid Edison, who right now is only 4 months and a half, he's gonna grow up. When we were playing Sega Genesis and Nintendo, it's 3D was cool, right? It was going from 2D to 3D video gaming, and we were like, oh wow, this is cool. But now it's, the new generation of folks that are coming into the workforce. They've played 3D games, but then they played the virtual reality part. So this is just an extension of that. But now it's for work or entertainment, or just, hey, I want to meet with my friend at a space cafe, right? I want to have a meeting on Mars, or I want to go to this museum, but the tickets are $150. But you know, they might have a digital version of that on a metaverse, which might not cost as much because everything is digital. They built it there, and it's easier to access. So we can go through a laundry list of benefits. Again, I'm more a tech advocate. Some people might say, well, same thing with social media. They're like, oh, this is disconnecting with society, and you're not having the same connection or relationship with people when it's on the metaverse versus in real life. And I gotta say, like the newer generation or like our generation, which has been in transition between the baby boomers who are like, yeah, I'd rather have a coffee with somebody at a Starbucks face to face versus having a virtual coffee in a Starbucks on the moon with someone who I can only see their avatar. I don't know if that's a real person, if they are who they are, but this is a digital version of them. So
Well,
yeah,
actually, okay, so coming back real quick,
yeah,
when we first started this conversation, I said, let's introduce David because we worked, we met virtually and then through another mutual contact. So I kind of made a wrong pivot, which was to get the conversation started on Web3 when I meant to have you introduce yourself.
oh
So I like
sorry,
to kind
yeah,
of get started. So see, this is what happens when, it's kind of like we're
but
doing this live,
yeah,
it's
I mean,
unrehearsed and we're just kind of hitting it. So
yeah,
let's get back to that, David. Let's do a real quick background. Um, share your background a little bit. How did you get
yeah,
into this space?
yeah,
And
sure,
what
sure.
is it that you do? What is it that you do?
Yeah, so I'm a digital marketer. I consult startups and other businesses based out of New Jersey. So I work in the tri-state area with certain clients that range from real estate offices to medical clients to automotive and even chamber of commerce. And that's actually where I got to meet Vivian. And we've been working together for I think close to 2 years now on the same projects. And yeah, so
Going
doing
going
things
on 3, because I think we met in
right.
2019. Mhm.
Yep. Well, the pandemic, that is like a time warp. So,
Yeah,
we don't know whether to add a year or minus a year for
reduce a year.
2020.
Yeah.
But
Uh-huh.
yeah, so we do similar things, but we do kind of overlap a little bit. Whereas Vivian, you work more on like the branding, designing aspect of marketing. I'm focused more on like kind of the technical, like the PPC, AdWords, setting up websites and of that sort. So yeah, kind of like two sides of the same coin. Us digital marketers. So that's the type of stuff that I do. And yeah, and I collaborate with other agencies and work on projects together.
Yeah. Okay. Well, great. Thanks for sharing a little bit about yourself. And didn't you just have a baby boy?
Yeah.
He
So
recently
yep,
came to this world, entered this world in real life.
yep. No metaverse babies yet. So yeah, Edison is about to turn 5 months in actually in 2 days he's gonna turn 5 months. And yeah, we're just super excited. He's been great. And yeah, being a digital marketer and having a family in today's like kind of work environment certainly allows it to be a little bit easier on the parents. I feel like, with our schedule being kind of flexible, especially when you run your own business, the schedule is a lot more flexible. So for those who, are looking ahead in the future outlook and saying, oh, you know, because there's certain career choices that people select and it's just harder to raise a kid, but not impossible, but it's just a lot easier when you're a digital marketer, at least from my standpoint. But hopefully
Well,
those
you
folks
get
that are
to,
watching.
sure, you have more flexibility with your time or how
Mm,
you prioritize your time.
right.
But coming right back to, for our audience, coming right back to the conversation we were having about the virtual reality, augmented reality and Web3 and so forth.
Mm,
We're talking about the pros and cons. You were just kind of discussing the pros and cons. And of course, there are pros and cons, right? So right
yeah.
now, most of the, public, they're focusing on the pros, the excitement and the
Mm,
evolution and the changes and a lot of things to look forward to. But I want to kind of bring up some of the cons.
okay.
Okay, so we're back.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about, let's cover a little bit of the challenges of having Web3, at least for all generations, not for us, right? Us and
Right.
older. What I've noticed is, with human psychology, the barriers because of human psychology, and that is, when it's virtual, even here, right? We can work together virtually. We've been doing that for a few years, but the challenge is, which I feel slows down the progress, is that you can't make eye contact directly. You know,
Mm.
you can't. It's just not possible
Right,
based
right,
on
right.
the
Physically not
engineering.
possible.
Yeah,
Hmm.
the engineering of the screen doesn't allow you to make eye contact, because when you're looking at the camera, your face is somewhere else, right? And there's, from a branding point of view or from a psychological point of view, and I know, and I'm not a doctor, but I know that I know enough about branding and creating culture and interaction and so forth, the message that you want to convey about your product and yourself, is that eye contact is very important, as well as being able to read cues about body language,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
And it's very hard to do, right, when you're not able to do that, create contact with the eyes, right? And in fact, if you have a group of people on screen, it's even harder. So I've noticed that facilitators in a meeting are typically busy trying to keep track of everybody on screen, and they have to use the mute button and so forth to control, who has the chance to speak and so forth. So then, the question can be, well, we can adapt to that. But my feeling is that, well, human behavior, the way we interact, this is generational. The way we've been interacting and the conditioning is generational. So for us to switch in a few years' time to be able to jump into, the screen online experience, I think is going to be a more challenge. And I noticed
Hmm.
from reading psychology books on children, um, well, not to get so serious about this conversation, but I am reading that statistically, and I should pull some of these resources for the public, that kids are having more social challenges, right? Interacting with each other. And we have more data now because they've been learning at home, right? And the benefit of kids staying at home learning was because they had their parents, walking through the homework, and they were more hands-on, and the relationship was more one-on-one with the parents being involved with the lessons and so forth. But when the kids are left alone to just, learn from the teacher on screen and they have no supervision, then there are more problems, that arose from that situation. So, and I feel that, there's going to be more data coming out, from
Yeah.
what's been happening in the last couple of years, everybody on virtual spaces. But just ancillarily, just speaking to people anecdotally, I've been hearing that a lot of people get frustrated because they don't feel like they can truly connect with, the persons that they're speaking to. So, I'm intrigued to find, how we are going to progress forward when I know that, businesses, large institutions want to migrate, usher everybody into this, you know, virtual reality of sorts. You know what I
Right.
mean? It's going to
Yeah.
be interesting. Because personally, for me, I like my in real life. I like my 3D world. This
Hmm.
is, so, but for the sake of our digital marketing topic, um, well, where are we when it comes to reaching audiences digitally? Like what quick 3 key points can you share with us on what you think we could do to create a better outreach virtually?
Yeah. I mean, it's always tough to bridge the generation gaps between people. Like you were saying, like, hey, there's folks that love to be connecting face to face or in person, um, through all the points that you made in like eye contact, just body language cues. Um, you have a better sense of engagement, right? Like if we were both in the same room, then it would have been like, oh, I can see that this person is, leaning in, interested, or, the eyes are wandering or whatnot. And then like, we
Yeah,
were talking about how the metaverse, you're having an avatar. I think they would need to build in some kind of attribute or some kind of factor in how to get people more engaged. I mean, there's always going to be the subset of people who are not going to assimilate, or I have certain people that won't go on Zoom calls. They hate Zoom calls because they're embarrassed that they keep on messing up the mute button, or the video is not clear, right? We are marketers, and this is why both of our videos are pretty damn good. Whereas other people might be is facing their chin, facing the ceiling, facing their shirt, or all those variables where it comes in where you're talking about, hey, you know what, I'm not engaged with you because I'm too busy seeing that your background is a messy room, or you have
right.
this all these variables where usually when we're face to face they don't bother us, but then because it's virtual it does bother us because again you're not fixated on it. Some people do fixate on it, but you're taking everything in, right? The scenery, the everything that's in the background, foreground, and everything. So that's why
Hmm.
when we sometimes tell other people, they're like, oh, how do you get such a clear video, or how come the audio comes through so clear on your Zoom calls? And it's like, oh, here are the steps, because you want the people to just focus on you. You don't want them to see other things. It's fine to have,
Although I have a bunch of album covers behind
but
me.
yeah, but that's kind of almost a uniform, like a music theme, right? And it gives you a
Yeah.
little bit personality, which is fine. I'm talking about like if I had hoarders, like
No, I've seen those.
boxes of stuff behind me, and people are then their mind wanders.
Fixated. Oh, real quick,
Yeah.
I had a virtual meeting with someone and it was in her room, her bedroom. This, mind you, this is a business meeting. And you could see her bed, but on top of her bed was a pile of her laundry. Like, and I
Exactly.
like,
Yeah. And this is,
and
and yeah. So go ahead. Sorry.
no, and it's distracting because you're
Yeah.
trying to have a conversation and you see all the personal items behind them, behind the individual, so you're distracted.
Yeah.
Whereas when you're in a physical space with someone in a work environment, it's usually a professional space, right?
Hmm.
So there are parameters, there are
Yeah.
boundaries that's
Because
already set.
you know I don't know if you had this situation, but like for us who have business meetings, they're pitching to a new client. We bring them to a place that we know we control the environment, right? As the best way we can, right? Conference room, office, what have you, so that there's no distractions, right? Whereas in Zoom call, you don't know who the other person might have in their background, right? Especially if it's multiple clients and it's like the CEO is there. And then if you have, say, your coordinator and whoever else on your team, and the background is different, everybody has something different. They're going to be fixated on those things, right? So that, I would say, that is definitely a disadvantage for like the metaverse or the kind of interaction. However, like to your point, how do we overcome that challenge? Um, Again, metaverse is going to help you. It's what we're doing now, but like literally in a virtual augmented world, right? So the folks that are going to be, I guess, transitioning over to that, they're going to be well adapted, and they're going to pay attention to whoever they're conversing with, right? Um, However, like folks that are maybe kind of on the fringe, they're not going to be as engaged because they're going to be like, whoa, I'm wearing goggles, I'm in Mars, and they're going to be focusing on Mars. They're going to focus on all the things that are happening in the background, right? So I, my point is, at the end of the day, majority of the people who can transition will transition, and they're going to maximize their benefit by using the metaverse. The ones who don't, there's still a market for that. I mean, there's people today, they're still old school. They're like, hey, Dave, just call me on the phone. I was like, okay, sure. But like, how there's like this saying, it's like your effectiveness in the messaging that you're trying to convey gets watered down through the media or the medium that you converse in, right? So writing, just text message or whatever, writing, that's one medium, but you don't get to hear the person, you don't get to see the person. So you're interpreting their, I guess, behavior, personality, and whatnot just by words. Sometimes,
Well, yeah, you have
yeah,
to overcome your bias. When you
right.
just
So
read words, you have your bias you have to overcome, but typically your bias will override the
yeah.
other person's message.
So sometimes, if they write you a letter, and this is back in the day, if you're a positive person, you're gonna look at it positively. If you're a negative person, you're gonna read it and you're like, what the heck? This person's being so negative, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even though it's just words on paper. But
Mm-hmm.
if you hear them on the phone, they can sound angry, they can sound happy, they can sound, concerned, whatever. So like that's the next medium, right? And then after that, the best medium is, face to face, right? You get to see
Yes,
them,
because you
you
have
know,
all your five senses
all
employed.
all working at the same time. And because like you were saying before, hey, we're doing this virtually, right? And
Mm-hmm.
we can see each other, we can hear each other. You can sense that, like, if I'm engaged or not, if I'm concerned, happy, sad, whatever. But then sometimes you might be missing out, like that one sixth sense is the vibe of the room, right? It-
Mm-hmm.
are they really getting my message? Are they really, you know, sometimes that is a little bit lost in the Zoom. However, Zoom or virtual meetings like this is the closest thing that you can do without being physically in the same room,
Right.
essentially. So
Mm-hmm.
that's why a lot of companies are like, yeah, just do a Zoom call, because that's the next best thing. But how often do we hear that business is always conducted in person, right? Big deals, they always bring everybody into one room, and then people are seeing each other face to face. And that's, the handshake. Like, if we wanted to do a handshake, we can't do a handshake right now, right?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, definitely there's going to be a market space. I feel like in the future, like a lot of things in marketing, or even just in society, there's a cycle, right? So, um, like, for example, text messaging has always been a thing, and that was kind of like the onset. Like, I don't know if you remember like beepers, where you're able to send them like a few words or one sentence.
Mm-hmm.
People can click through it and they say, oh, okay, home for dinner, 5 o'clock, whatever, right? Quick and easy. But like that's has
Generation before was just a
yeah,
phone number would display, like,
yeah, like,
call
and
this number back.
yeah, you recognize the number. So if somebody was paging you, and typically this wasn't like for what do you call it, residential use, like your families wouldn't have all beepers. It's more for business, right? But you recognize the number, you'd be like, oh, this is my boss, I gotta call them back. Oh, this is my client, I gotta call them back. Right? So yeah, I mean, some people still kind of operate in that sense, right? Some people are like, I don't need a meeting, I don't need a Zoom call, just text me. I don't need a phone call, don't leave a voicemail, text me. I will understand your message, right? You hear this a lot with like some of the younger generation, even like current generation now is like, texting is king. Just text me. It's easier that way, right? And then there's also that kind of paper trail. It's like, okay, you told me to meet there at 6 o'clock, and you're doing this, doing that, right? So I think every generation has their own kind of mode of communicating, but I think going back to metaverse, whether you like it or dislike it, it's coming. So one way or another, it's either you completely deflect it and just stick with like Zoom calls and phone calls and so forth, or you might say, okay, I have to give in, right? It's kind of like the first year of Facebook. everybody's like, I don't want to get this. And then soon 9 out of 10 of your friends have it. And you're like, okay, I have to sign up. I have to do it. So
Yeah,
that might be
you're
the
kind
same
of
thing
peer
with the
pressured.
metaverse. Yeah.
Peer pressured to do it.
Well, here's the thing. If I were to tell you, right, this is hypothetical. Oh, it's 9 out of 10 times it's easier to get a client through metaverse. What are you gonna do now?
Well, I mean, we
Doing
could lead
that?
with that. The question was, what would be the best approach to take considering that, if say, people are moving towards metaverse, how do
Mhm.
you, what is the new method of communicating in metaverse?
Yeah,
I know
I
it's
mean,
hypothetical right now because we're not really in metaverse
yeah,
most
I
of the
mean,
time, but we're definitely building the infrastructure of
yeah,
what the experience is going to be like.
people are definitely intrigued and they are trying to figure it out. It's kind of like, you're building the plane as you're flying it. I would say the first movers are going to be the best kind of go-to people to consult future companies on, setting up metaverse type of, whether it's rooms, buildings, states, properties, and whatnot. But
Yeah, because
it's,
big brands are buying real estate in metaverse. They're already staking their plot of
yeah.
land and zip code, if that's the right word for it. So do you think it'll be worthwhile to go ahead and have an identity? And let's help out our audience too, because there isn't just one designated metaverse. There's many metaverses out there that people are trying to build, right?
Yeah. I
Um,
mean, I would
like
say
Decentraland is
yeah.
one metaverse,
So
space.
I would say the most popular one right now, or the one that has the most backing or like the most funding, would be probably Facebook's Meta companies like Metaverse, right?
I thought Decentraland, they're building a space now.
Right. Well, it's kind of like, social media, right? There's Facebook, there's Twitter, there's Instagram. So like with metaverse, it's the same way where, there's going to be metaverse, and then there's going to be, whoever else, like you said, all these different brands coming out with their own, like our conventional brands might do the same thing, right? Like say, for example, BMW, they could create their own metaverse,
I
right?
think Disneyland is doing.
Oh, and it totally makes sense, right? They're going more and more into digital content, so it only makes sense for them to enter that and or be a first mover in that realm, because you know it's too expensive to go to these places now, right? So for the what do you call it, medium income family, like, it's much cheaper to buy maybe a $300 Oculus, and with internet access and a well, equipped computer, your family could go to virtual Disneyland. Versus going there in person, because the tickets are like $1,000, right? So I think certain brands are seeing that and they want to widen their kind of consumer segments, right? They're not just targeting for the upper class, if you will. They want to make sure it's available to everyone. So there's opportunity there to market and to, extend their business into the metaverse.
Mhm, mhm. Well, let's wrap it up, David. I know we always start with, we're going to keep this recording brief, concise, but we end up like going,
Well,
we've been
yeah,
talking for
I
hours
mean,
already.
this is it's a, ever expanding and also complex topic. I know we just kind of scraped the surface here in regards to, like, digital content, metaverse. But yeah, I mean, this is interesting stuff, and this is why we typically go into like different tangents that are related to it. And then also, hopefully, the content that we talked about is helpful for some folks that are interested in the metaverse, as well as, like, digital marketing in general. And then, like, we'll have another topic next time. And yeah, we just want to try to share the knowledge and expand on what we know.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, well, thank you for that, David. And thank you everyone for sticking around this long, and hope you come back, invest your time with us, because we're going to be sharing a lot more information about where we are with digital marketing. Okay,
Awesome.
bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.